Hello and welcome to our episode 3 of our podcast called Impact Plus. I'm Kevin and this is Bill.
What's up, y'all?
Yeah, and we're glad to be here. And we're going to do something a little bit different in this episode. The last two were kind of a dig deeper on the sermon series we've been teaching and going deeper to that. This one is going to be on something about how we want to make the most of every opportunity. As Ephesians 5:15 and 16, it says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil." And so what we have here is we're going to be working through kind of an acronym that you've talked a lot about, we've talked a lot about, and possibly even bringing in some guests and other people and sharing aspects of this later on. But today we wanted to focus on just kind of explaining what is this acronym and what is this making the most of opportunity. How can we do that? Why don't you share a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Because when we look at the framework of the scriptures, it's really helping us develop our form, right? And that's what we like to say here, our kingdom form. So that's the acronym FORM. F-O-R-M. Family, occupation, relationships, and our mission. And just like with our physical body, so often our physical body gets out of alignment. Do you ever have those mornings where you wake up and say, "Oh, my neck is just hurting me," or whatever it may be?
Pretty much every day now.
Oh, is it? Yeah. I feel it more and more as I get older too. It's not fun, is it?
No.
But when we get our body in alignment, it feels so much better, right? And I think so often we don't even realize how often so many of our struggles, attitudes, and everything else is not because of the circumstances around us, but because our form is out of line. And so this is really walking through, and how do we bring alignment to our form?
So this takes the idea of understanding that our physical, just as our physical life needs to be in alignment, this is really focused on the spiritual component of how spiritually this impacts us.
Absolutely.
And how family, occupation, relationships, and mission does that.
I mean, we need to see everything through the lens of spirituality. Yeah. Everything is connected. And just like what you read earlier from what Paul wrote in Ephesians 5, make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. So in other words, I believe what Paul is implying there is we don't recognize enough how much evil exists all around us. The Bible says the devil is the prince of this world who masquerades as an angel of light. And he is the father of lies. And so that's how he operates. And the struggle is we view evil certain ways. And so we have our picture, it's like that very scary demon, right? Or whatever it may be. Or it's only through this avenue of supreme wickedness. But evil happens in the most undertone ways in our life that pulls us in.
Happens in the undercurrents of even our little heart, building pride and things like that up, and just it can be masked in so many ways.
And so the evil exists, and evil draws us in our family, draws us in at work, in our relationships, and even distorting what our mission is in life.
Yeah. Well, why don't we walk through each of those and talk a little bit more, and then we can talk a little bit more about where we're going to go in the future. But let's start with the F, family.
Sure.
Sure, but what say more about how the framework here in your form and family impacts this making the most of every opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's really critical that first we really examine our role in our family. Whatever your family dynamics look like to you. If you're a child living at home with your parents, if you're married and you have children, or whatever that is, what does that dynamic look for you, and how important it is to operate in our family from a biblical perspective. I really think as you dig into Paul's letter to Ephesus and Ephesians, he really gives a whole blueprint of the family relationships and how you're supposed to operate within the family.
Well, in reality, as we look at our world and our culture today, we see that families are blended now more than ever. They're struggling in some ways. It's non-traditional in so many ways. How do you work within that framework of the fact that families are very different today in that context of the form?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's really viewing everything from God's perspective and God's standards, right? We acknowledge that in so many families, in so many homes, there is brokenness, but we cannot use that to distort our mindset that because it's broken, it cannot be restored. and we believe in a God of reconciliation, right? And a God of restoration. And so he brings restoration through that. And so how do we bring restoration in our home into a healthy dynamic? Because especially, if you look at a blended family, and, someday we'll have maybe some guests here sharing from that perspective. Because I'm obviously not in a blended family, so I can't really speak effectively into that because my experience is not there, but I can speak from what I've observed from other people who've walked this walk, and that is that yes, there is brokenness, and sometimes there's other circumstances you have to work through, but you can come to a healthy point.
Yeah, I feel like that we could get into a ton of different conversations just on the family side of things, from marriage to parenting to, even adoption or fostering. And we get into so many layers. So this could be some exciting things that we get into.
There's so many elements we can get to here, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, family is obviously a great need, and if that alignment is going well, then we're moving right path. The next one, occupation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is where I think it really gets real. And I'd love someday where we're going to bring in executives, professionals of different levels to share from their perspective. Because I think sadly, too often, we separate our faith and our life in the world. And we live this lie of this separation between the two.
Yeah.
And when really everything gets blended together. And so occupation can even be identified for children who go to school to the top executives. How do you live out your faith for Christ in your workplace?
Yeah, I think another completely on the side layer of that is how do you not allow your occupation to be your identity?
Oh, that's a good point.
To be your focus.
Yep.
Because the idea is that some people, like if you lost a job, or you're in the middle of a transition, or maybe you're not working right now, all right, how do you view what you do and your purpose in your day and work of what you do, because it still has purpose and meaning?
Absolutely.
So that would be a good conversation.
And even another conversation we can take a step further is for those in retirement years. The golden years. And too often people in the church have lived a lie, and that is they believe that retirement's not a biblical principle. But actually in the Old Testament, it is a biblical principle, because there's a place where we see in the law that the men of the nation, when they turned 50, they would hand it over to someone younger. All
right, I'm ready.
So you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
But I think that what we see there is, it is a biblical principle. There's a time in our life professionally where we hand it off, but that doesn't mean our purpose is done.
Right.
So in retirement years, there is purpose. And so now in this season, how am I living? What is my role to follow God fully?
Yeah, I love that. So it looks like there's going to be some great conversations we'll have around
Absolutely.
that. Now let's look at the R, relationships. Is this just any relationships? What relationships are we going to be focusing on?
I think, obviously the F really focuses on our family, but beyond our family, there's other relationships. And just like we talked about in the last podcast with the 10 Commandments, it's all built out of our relationships, right? Our whole lives. And so first it starts with love God. So part of it is, how do we love God more, and what does that look like? But then, how do we live out loving others outside of our family?
Yeah.
And this includes people we like and, people we don't like.
Yeah, I found it's pretty easy to love people you like.
It is.
Yeah, and
do you like me, Kevin?
yeah, I love you, Bill.
Oh, I appreciate that. Good. We're in a good spot.
But the reality, yes, I do. But the issue is, it's so easy to just stay in that world that how do we begin to love people who we don't get along with, who we don't agree with, who we struggle with, there's tension with, there's all those things. How do we love them? Because it's almost like we've taken on this mantra of, it's okay for me not to love you if you disagree with me.
Yeah,
that's okay.
And that's the thing. We've made that our mindset that, well, because we disagree in these different areas, I don't have to love you. Even worse, what I see, it breaks my heart, because in our polarized society, I've seen so many teachers or TED Talk people or podcasts or video YouTubers who are in this polarized mindset, and they are putting up faces of people saying, this is the face of your enemy. And we lose sight of what Paul wrote in Ephesians, that our battle's not against flesh and blood, right? And we are called to love others, love our enemies, pray for our enemies. So I think it's really critical that we learn how to live that out.
I'm actually really excited about talking about this a little bit more, because it is not easy to love someone who you feel has hurt or damaged you or caused pain in your life. And so how do you do that? And how do you walk through? I think that could be some really, we've talked about how there's toxic people in the world, and we have to evaluate, well, maybe I am sometimes that too. And when that happens, how do you love someone who is not someone you want to even be around?
I think it's a great question, and something great I'm really excited to talk and wrestle with in future podcasts. And also part of this element too is, how do I forgive? Right? Especially even people who may still be hurting me, I'm still called to forgive them. What does that look like?
Yeah, and I think forgiveness can be, I'm excited about talking about forgiveness, because I think we really should give a time to that, because it can be something that we think that when I forgive someone, what I'm saying is, I now let you off the hook.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not even, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with the other person. Actually, it's really about our heart and posture of our heart.
Absolutely.
But that'll be good as well. So the last one, the last letter of our acronym is M, mission. What's the mission we're going to be talking about?
Well, I think it's critical, because if you are a follower of Jesus, you are called to a mission. And so this is about, what does this mean to live my life missionally, which is really what Impact is all about. As we kind of walk through what we call the growth track and experiencing that more, we identify what it means to live missionally. And so future podcasts, we're going to be looking at individuals who are living missionally in their lives and living out a calling beyond these walls of making disciples who make disciples, and also faith-driven entrepreneurs and missional business owners, and even other people, business leaders who are living missionally at work too.
Yeah, that's great. I think the number one question you'll hear across the world, one of the number one question is, what's the meaning and purpose of my life? And when we can label that clearly in a perspective that comes from God and the mission that we're on, and be unified in that, it's a thing that will make a difference.
And I'm just world, without a doubt. And so this podcast focus, I'm really excited about. Just going deeper in these different elements of how can we really live practically and really be honest with our heart in each of these categories.
So I love how this idea of F.O.R.M, F.O.R.M, gives us a framework for this biblical kingdom perspective living. How do you see that as a way for other people? What's your challenge maybe for this week out of this? Like, what do you hope people, because let me ask it this way. We all have a form, and we can talk about individual things within that. But for someone first starting off with trying to think through the F.O.R.M, how do they get started to even think about this framework for their life?
I think that's a great question. And when we look at Hebrews, it talks about how we examine the heart and how we examine the behaviors and the sin that so easily entangles us, right? And I think it really starts with prayer. It starts there, because we have to get into a place to allow God to truly help us to open up our hearts and open up our minds to what's there, because I think we all recognize the sore spots. Those triggers that sometimes happen, but we always don't know where that's coming from. And so I think it just starts with prayer. God, help me to know the things in my heart that I cannot see. Help me to be honest with me. Help me to truly identify the sore spots in my heart that are causing all these other things, because as we walk through this, it's really getting to a place of examining the heart and getting real of how can we align our form to spiritual healthiness and fullness.
I love that. And I'm excited about what we're going to be covering with that. It reminds me, as you talk about prayer there, Psalm 139, where David cries out to God and says, "Search me, O God, and see if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me to the way of everlasting." It feels like for us to really see this idea of that spiritual alignment taking the form, F-O-R-M, it really really is saying, God, hey, I'm willing for you to poke and prod and look anywhere in me because you already know me, and how can I rest in you and see what you're doing. So it's going to be exciting. We're looking forward to it. We're going to have guests and different people and different focuses. And by the way, put in the comments if there's something you would love us to address on one of the F.O.R.M's side of things that we would love to talk more about it. Well, thank you for being with us, and we can't wait to be with you again soon.
Absolutely. God bless everybody.